Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. So we have my good friend, Pastor Matt Shea, with us again today. Matthew, we got a lot to talk about.
We do. Vlad, great to be back on. It's incredible how fast things are moving and how the world is changing literally day by day. Yeah, incredible.
It is. And I want to dive right into what's happening. So China. We saw Trump's in China. We are hearing rumors that the CIA, and we're going to get to that, raided Tulsi Gabbard's office last night, took the MKUltra stuff that Trump, signed to declassify, took the JFK files, and we're going to get to that. So we see the deep state real active while Trump's in China. Trump flies to China trying to end World War III. Xi threatens President Trump over Taiwan to his face while the whole world's watching. And before I take your get your take on this, I want to share this. This is from the War Room. Just play the first minute and a half of this because I think it's important. Here we go.
What Xi did and the fact that he used this, the book that you put up from Allison was written in 2015. So for the last 11 years, American China hands, academics have been pushing this thesis that, this is going to end up in a conflict. So we, United States, have to, as you said, accommodate, appease, make treaties, have people-to-people engagements, government-to-government engagements. And that's what we have done in our governments until the Trump administrations. And now we come into this event and Xi tells Trump, hey, Taiwan is our core denominator between the two countries. That's important. And he said that. Yeah, he said it was a common denominator, and he said that if we handle this properly, we'll have a great relationship. And then he said, otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy.
So I want to stop it right there. That's the quote. I was watching, stayed up all night, watched Trump land, all that. I found two things interesting. Number one, Xi did not come to meet Trump, no matter how people paint how great the reception was, and it was. But he didn't come out to meet him. He comes out to meet Putin. He comes out to meet Kim Jong-un from North Korea, other leaders. He did not personally come to meet Trump at the bottom of the stairs. So people are painting look, it was such a great reception, but Xi wasn't there. That's number one. That's what I found interesting. Sure, number two. Sure. How to his face, he said, this will lead to World War III. He pretty much said, we made the decision. We're going for Taiwan. It's ours. How do you take all this?
Okay, so let's talk quickly about, this piece with China, then we go back to the MKUltra stuff. All right, so it's important for Americans to understand that the Chinese need to save face. They do not like being humiliated in any way, shape, or form. And Taiwan is a humiliation to the Chinese Communist Party because when Chiang Kai-shek, who was the actual leader of China, fled mainland China because the communists were allowed to take over and because elements inside the United States government were conspiring to allow Mao Zedong to come to power, which, by the way, cost the lives of 60 million people plus. He fled to Taiwan. Chiang Kai-shek did. So that Taiwan is a separate independent country, as a matter of fact, because it was the original China. However, in an Asian mindset, the Chinese see that as a humiliation that they need to recoup. And whatever Chinese leader does that will be remembered forever as the greatest Chinese leader who ameliorated that humiliation, conquered Taiwan, and brought them back in. All right, so this is why they're doing this. The Chinese Communist Party is hell-bent on doing this with Taiwan. I believe their timeline is this fall. The more the indicators are that I see. Let me talk specifically on what those indicators are. Number one, North Korea just removed all mentions in its constitution of reunification and recognized South Korea as a separate state. Some people took that as a positive sign. That is not a positive sign. That is a sign that they are going to treat that as a separate country that needs to be conquered in the event of war with China. Number two indicator, Putin and Xi met several times. Each time it's very clear that there has been some kind of deal cut that China would back Russia and require its proxy North Korea to back Russia in its war against Ukraine. In return, Russia is going to back the Chinese when they invade Taiwan. Third indicator, the Japanese intelligence is being reconstituted now for the first time since World War II. The Japanese are standing up an intelligence agency. The Japanese are also moving, and the public in Japan now is shifting to support the move from just a defense force, which is what was required as part of the treaties after World War II when Japan lost, to move to an offensive capable force. That tells me, and also their manufacturing has been ramped up, that Japan is preparing for war in the South China Sea, and that they will be one of the major manufacturers and suppliers of arms to the countries that are coming together as part of the coalition against China there. Fourth indicator, the Green Berets just did an exercise using USVs. These are autonomous, submersible, and also surface drones. In other words, under the water, above, on top of the water, drones en masse to be a mitigation. Literally, they call it the hellscape plan, quote unquote, to mitigate China invading Taiwan by using all of these drones. They tested those drones on the Batanes Island in the north, which is one of the northernmost islands of the Philippine island chain that is right near Taiwan. And it would be part of the trifurcation plan of Taiwan, or of Philippines, of Taiwan, of the United States, and then of Japan in the north with its southernmost island chains to try to break any blockade with Taiwan. The fifth indicator is that after Xi threatened that, the United States held the line on its arms sales, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio came out and said, hey, we are holding the line. We have changed nothing with our relationship with Taiwan. There has been no change there. So that brings us to today. That's how we see it. I believe that by the end of this year, China is going to do something very stupid and very likely start World War III in a shooting capacity, because we're already in World War III in the cyber realm, the financial and economic realms. We're already in World War III in the manufacturing realms and the rare earth metals realms, all these things. We are already there. So that's where we're at today. And then we can kind of get into the analysis of why is Trump even there here in just a second.
I wanted to mention something you brought up, North Korea. So my barber, who I need to go see ASAP, his wife is from South Korea. And, I talk to them all the time, and they're an older couple about to, retire next year. But they fly there a couple times a year to see her family. And he shared with me a couple times now. He said, he said either your generation, he's like, or your kids will see South Korea reunify to North Korea. I said, hold on, did you just make a mistake? First time when he said that, he said, no. He said their government is very pro-North Korea, this modern government. They are demilitarizing the demilitarized zone.
Yep.
He said, and the youth is very sympathetic to the North. They're being overworked. So they're like, hey, we should be communists. So, because we don't like what's happening. He's like, their youth within every election votes more and more and more towards to the North Korean sympathizers.
So
So
there are,
that's something I found interesting.
I've heard the same thing. I've read several articles that the current government is very sympathetic to China, very anti-Christian actually as well, and there have been some anti-Christian moves by the current South Korean government, in addition to deposing the conservative, what we would consider the conservative government that preceded it, in a very, I think, in a very intentional way, basically putting them in a position where the previous government had to say there was a coup going on and try to do something about it. Now, they're trying to work with the United States at this point because they have to. But I agree with you 100%. There is something very wrong with the current government in South Korea that has raised the alarm bells for the United States from a geostrategic, geopolitical standpoint, and should raise the alarm bells of the church. Now, I know that there's going to be a big Holy Spirit conference in South Korea coming up in October, and we'll see, the revival there. But the Christian leaders in South Korea need to step up here and step up with their prayers as well for their country, because if South Korea continues down the road that it's going, it will become an existential threat to the peace and stability of the region, and to Japan and the United States specifically, and the Philippines. So I've heard that as well.
So the last thing you kind of touched on, you said, what is Trump doing in China? What's he doing in China?
I think what Trump's doing is a last-ditch effort to make China, because China is it has to be primarily an export economy. Right now, they are being deprived of the economic ability to wage war. They're being deprived of the fuel to wage war because of Iran and Venezuela and what the United States has done, shifting out of the Gulf and out of the Strait of Hormuz to the United States. Now you have oil companies shifting everything toward Texas. That's really good for our economy. We're now reaching almost max capacity for exports right now, records for the United States. There is a lag time between that and what we will see in our economy here in the United States, but it is happening. It's there, and there is a massive revival in manufacturing that's happening in the United States. So what Trump is trying to do is entangle China so much, possibly in trade, that it won't wage war. Now, historically, this hasn't worked. In fact, the United States signed a big trade agreement with Japan right prior to World War II, and I kind of hear the echoes of this historically, that we are trying to do this, and he's trying to stop World War III, but the Chinese are hell-bent on Taiwan.
So when was it, like 2 or 3 weeks ago? From Taiwan, this lady flew in, and she was just like kissing the boots of Xi, saying that Taiwan and China are the same thing. We are brother nations and all this other stuff. And then I looked into, I don't remember her name, but she is the leader of the opposition, of the current leader of the opposition, right, of the current leading party. Or the party in control. And she actually she's probably going to be their next president or prime minister, whoever they have. And she really wants to reunify with China. This is like the first time they had a meeting of this level.
Yep.
In over 60 years.
Well, so even Taiwan is facing internal issues with its own political parties, some of them being co-opted by the Chinese. Look at the Chinese. We have to be very clear on this. As a matter of fact, the Chinese have waged a decades-long war against the United States of America. That's just a fact. They have done it through the mass line information campaigns using a Maoist insurgency model. They have done it through the United Front, where they have local communist functionaries and trained Marxists here in the United States, trained by Chinese intelligence, to combine with the jihadis in the United States of America. Probably the biggest example of this publicly is the Squad, to undermine the United States of America, to decrease defense spending in the United States of America, to undermine the key institutions of the United States of America, to take the morals out of society. In fact, it's been a Chinese intelligence operation for a very long time to begin to own marijuana grows and dispensaries in the United States of America, and also to intentionally, through the cartel proxies in South America and here in the United States, to introduce fentanyl and carfentanil as a revenge for the opium wars and the opium epidemic in China. I mean, this is fact. The Chinese have waged economic warfare against the United States in trade agreements, tried to peel off allies, have tried to create their own international system as a replacement for the SWIFT banking system. The Chinese have tried to undermine the United States regarding rare earth minerals. And trying to control the United States. So look at Trump is going into this eyes wide open. Just because he's saying some things that are very conciliatory, saying some nice things to Xi, doesn't mean he doesn't have eyes wide open as he's walking into this. But the fact is, the Chinese have been at war with the United States for years now. It just hasn't been a shooting war. And now we're at a point where Trump is trying to do a last-ditch effort to stave off World War III through trade and saying, listen, would you prefer trade where everybody becomes prosperous, or would you prefer war? And what he doesn't, I don't think, what he doesn't have going for him is that the Chinese Communist Party would rather go to war rather than lose power and control, because if they continue to get prosperous, the people are going to eventually rise up. China, the church in China right now, fastest growing, I think, in the world, huge growth there. And the Chinese church leaders, the underground church leaders have said, please don't take away the persecution, God, because persecution is what's keeping the Chinese church growing. And eventually, at some point, that is going to flip that system there. And I think the Chinese Communist Party see it coming. They also have a demographic bomb where their population is dropping off a cliff right now. So they will not have many more years to actually go to war. So I think that's why they moved the timeline up and they're looking at this fall.
So, really quickly, and to particular, okay, I will get your feedback on something else before. Next question. Tulsi Gabbard. Yesterday, Fox reported on it. Then today we got, contradicting reports.
Yeah, it was overblown.
Okay, so what happened there?
So it was, and I got to ask the question, like, who gave Fox that information? Because it seems like they were trying to create a rift inside the administration.
Luna.
All right, so, well, it wasn't Luna. It was somebody that reported on her interview. Her interview, she did not say that there was a raid. She said that some files had been seized, and they weren't seized yesterday. They were seized before. Regardless of semantics, there is an issue with what the CIA spokesperson put out yesterday. And Senator Mike Lee and others have said, retract this. It's ridiculous. They've said basically that the Senate was wrong for subpoenaing and having a whistleblower come forward on the CIA analysis of COVID-19 and its origins. Well, listen, we've been talking about, I remember 5 years ago, like 2 weeks after this whole thing broke, we were on Patriot Radio saying this was a lab leak. And people were pillorying us, that's a conspiracy theory. Those people need to apologize to the American people. They were wrong. They lied. They were part of an information operation against the United States. And now, when that spokesman comes out on this isn't some place where you need to be pushing back. You need to be saying, we're sorry. We covered this up and it was intentional. That will never happen again. That should be the right posture of the CIA, but it's not. So getting around all the semantics, the fact of the matter is there's still people inside the CIA who think they're unaccountable, who think that they're actually driving the train on this and not the legislative branch of the government. And 3, they don't want to be accountable. So that's what we really need to address with this. That's still out there, even though there's some contradiction over what happened exactly with the files. I heard in one that they might have been returned. Anna Paulina Luna doesn't seem to think so because she had to postpone her hearing. So either way, that hearing needs to go forward. Those records need to be made public. We need to have an open debate about the accountability of the CIA and all of this. And General Michael Flynn, by the way, has been kind of leading the charge on that.
Now,
and MKUltra, just so we're clear, MKUltra was a mind control program, and it was back in the 1960s and 70s. Some of it was classified in the Kennedy, the JFK files, right, to hide it. So I'm not so worried about those records. I mean, they're probably appalling, but I'm not so worried about those records. I'm wondering if that program is not continued in some capacity, and that's what the CIA is trying to hedge against right now and trying to stop.
I think, my personal opinion, it never stopped. MKUltra it's booming. I mean,
It
look at
continued in some other form. Yeah.
yeah. If you look at the people, like, okay, if you look at the guy that assassinated Trump, well, tried to assassinate Trump, all three of them, right?
Right.
The pro-Ukrainian guy. If you take the guy that murdered Charlie Kirk, and you put their faces together, they all have that. And I don't want to sound mean, but they all have that look of very weak emotionally, very weak mentally. They look like the guys that were bullied in school and have a lot of anger. And so it was like, they were all affected by the same programming or brainwash, whatever it might be. All right, but we know going back to the 60s and 70s, they our CIA, our government was admitting, yeah, we can make anybody, like, if we find the right subject, we can get him to go and kill a bunch of people and he won't even know what happened.
But you know, and the hope is, I mean, there is a way to come out of that. There's a way for people to come out of that. And the answer is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Through the power of the Holy Spirit for people to come out of that. And so what the CIA did was intentional satanic ritual abuse by another name. And some of this was without anybody's consent, by the way. So the human mind, so there's four aspects of our soul: the mind, the emotions, the will, and the identity. And so what this program would do is it would fracture off part of somebody's emotions, fracture off part of somebody's mind, fracture off part of their identity, part of their will. It would fracture it off because God has made us to compartmentalize a traumatic event so that we can actually continue to live and survive. That was actually God's mercy. And so when they did that, they would compartmentalize this trauma and then use it to then manipulate the person to do something they otherwise wouldn't do. Well, there's a way out of that spiritually, and that is to bring Jesus Christ right into the middle of that, get healing, and then have reintegration of those compartmentalized areas of people's mind, will, emotions, and identity, and reintegrate them. Now, people should be trained in how to do this reintegration and trauma recovery, but the bottom line is that's what they did. It's wicked, it's evil. It's what Satanists do. It's what ritual abuse does. And the only reason they do that is to control people for wicked and evil schemes. So this needs to, again, be out in the public. There needs to be a massive apology. This should never happen again. There needs to be accountability if anybody is still alive that was part of that program. And there needs to be further hearings on this, investigations. This is not okay. And here's the biggest fallout from this. As a result of some of this stuff, and as a result of thinking that technology and signals intelligence and image intelligence and other intelligence from the electronic and digital world has supplanted human sources or human, that's one of the biggest fallouts of this. Our human intelligence apparatus in the United States of America right now is almost non-existent and non-functional. That's what really needs to be rebuilt in the CIA. That's one of its purposes, so that we can interdict terrorist organizations that are trying to bring down this country. We can interdict foreign state actors that are trying to bring down this country. We can interdict foreign state actors that are training people, that are funding people, organizations, nonprofits in the United States to bring down this country. And we need human intelligence to do that. The fact of the matter is, though, MKUltra cannot be a reason not to have human intelligence. Yes, there needs to be accountability, but we also need to rebuild our human intelligence apparatus as part of our counterintelligence strategy here in the United States. I needed to make sure that's a clear distinction for the protection of this country going forward.
It's interesting, like some of the stuff you said, and when it's like, man, they like a big portion of society in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, even in Russia, it's like there's this unexplainable hatred towards each other, who just like less than a decade ago, you were living, yes, in separate countries, but driving past the border, family, and now they just hate each other. It's like, and did you see Tucker Carlson interviewed Zelensky's former press secretary?
I heard about it. Yeah.
Everything she talked about, blood rituals, witchcraft, drug use like crazy, 24/7. But I've been hearing about Yermak, the guy that was just, that just went to jail, his former right-hand man. I've been hearing for months about like Marina, what was her name? Or Maria.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. She was openly talking about like she'd go with him to cemeteries, tell him, hey, dig up this body, do this sacrament. She's openly talking about it. Now we have people that escaped from there kind of saying, it's crazy. And now that we touch this, I want to show you the Gateway Pundit just reported on this. So World War III watch. Russian parliament approves law authorizing military to protect Russian citizens abroad.
Yeah.
As critics warn. Now, here's the underline. Russian citizens. We protect our citizens abroad. Right? If somebody touches one of our citizens, we send in the military. We go in and do something. There's another part of this is in Europe. I have family that lives in the UK, in Poland, in Germany, in Ukraine. And if you're just like, if they know you're a Russian citizen, just a regular citizen who's even against the war, you could get harassed. You could be assaulted, robbed, and most of the governments, like in Lithuania, Latvia, they're actually encouraging that. So it's a double-sided, double-edged sword. Number one, that this could turn into something really, really bad. Number two, we do the same thing. We don't allow anybody, for no reason to go after our citizens. But three, we do see because of the propaganda in Europe and Canada, we do see just, your average Russian. My wife was told not too long ago by her cousin that she needs to forbid me from speaking Russian because that's the occupier's language. And I'm like, you just learned how to speak Ukrainian after the war began and you lived in Ukraine for 20 years. Like the propaganda is so deep and the hatred is just for your average people. I've only been in Russia maybe like twice in my life. I wasn't even born there, but he's speaking that language. It's the fourth most spoken language in the world. Like,
that's not what this law is about. In fact, this is one of the most dangerous indicators that I've seen in the last 3 months. What this is about is Putin. This is one of the biggest signals that the Chinese are going to do an invasion of Taiwan in the fall of this year. This law is being set up by Putin to be able for Putin to go in and pull Russian citizens out of countries where they might be trapped at the initiation of hostilities by China. That's what this is about. And if a country tries to detain those Russians, then the Russians would say that's a pretext for war. So he is trying to protect his citizens abroad right now in anticipation of the Chinese invading Taiwan in the fall. That's how I would read this. And I would take this as the Chinese are continuing forward. Russia is preparing the ground. So that's how I would take this law. This is not I wouldn't say that this is like Putin preparing to invade, Ukraine or something, not Ukraine, but the Baltics, like Latvia, Lithuania, or Estonia. I would take this as he is putting down a solid line that he will get his people home in the event of hostilities that break out across the world. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's man, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to end it with this question, but I really want to get your point of view. If World War III breaks out this year, and I would blame a big part of it on Europe stopping Trump from bringing peace to Ukraine. He was this close several times, and he says it. But then
they're talking about it still, even today and yesterday. Yeah, I mean, look.
Because if that war were to stop, imagine how much more weapons NATO and the United States and money and budget, more money in NATO we'd still have. That would be another deterrent to China.
The schizophrenia in Germany, France, and to a lesser extent, Italy, the main leaders in Europe, regarding whether or not they're really an ally of the United States of America, is at the core of emboldening China. And they've been talking about Russia. The bigger issue is China. And for those European leaders to start striking side deals with China, Canada to embrace China, I mean, what this is doing is emboldening China to actually invade Taiwan. Those European leaders are actually promoting World War III through incompetence. Now, some people might say it is malice. I don't think necessarily all the leaders are doing it out of malice. The leader of France right now, though, I don't know. The leader of Canada right now, I don't know. I think we need to have a question, and Trump should have and maybe already has, a direct conversation. We will not allow Canada to be a Chinese base on our doorstep. And Alberta just filed a petition. The first court denied it, but that doesn't shut the petition down to leave Canada. They have enough signatures now to do it and have a vote this October. In fact, a vote can actually be called independent of the court system there, just so everybody understands. That's still on the docket. But the bottom line for Trump is we can't have a Chinese proxy on our doorstep in Canada. We just can't. He's not going to allow it. Just like he didn't allow the Iranians to have a drone base in Venezuela. And oh, by the way, it finally came out. We talked about it, Vlad. It finally came out. They had enriched uranium in Venezuela. And was there ongoing research down there? That hasn't come out. And was it Iranian research going down there? And had they moved their program from Iran, at least in part, to Venezuela? Trump's not going to allow it in Venezuela. He's certainly not going to allow it in Canada. And I think I would watch for meetings with Carney here in the next few weeks as well between the Trump administration and the Canadians.
Well, thank you. I want to really quickly shout out your YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pastor Matt's personal YouTube channel. They upload several times a week. Go subscribe. Again, it is Patriot Radio with Matt Shea. Thank you so much, my friend. God bless you. I'll see you next week.
God bless you too. Keep up the fight.